I know it's a bit early in the season, but have you been at the hardware store lately and seen what's being offered? Not only that, but have you also seen the innovative offerings from some of the tech companies for your lawn as well? Now, there's nothing wrong with being innovative. In fact, I'm all for it, but I think things are headed down an interesting path. I'm not going to spill the beans on them just yet, but I will say one word that pretty much describes all these products, and that word is questionable. In today's video, we're going to be looking at this Craftsman lawnmower, and the problem is that it's been in the shed for most of its life. But after getting it out to put some gasoline in it, it experienced a terrible fuel leak that makes it extremely dangerous to use. Now, this is not a complete repair video. In fact, this is a revisit of an old repair from years ago. So if you want to see the actual repair video, click on the link at the top of the screen. Otherwise, we're going to be talking about the direction equipment seems to be headed, and so far, what I'm seeing I don't really care for. Of course, these are my opinions and yours might not be the same as mine, but that's perfectly fine. Now take this lawnmower for example. For me, this is not that complicated, but for the past version of me 20 years ago, this would have been a bit of a mystery. So to deal with this mysterious machine, companies are now trying to make them somewhat familiar and much easier to deal with. The innovations they came up with was to make it just like your cell phone. Charge a battery, put that battery in the mower, close the handle, and off you go. It's simple and easy with nothing like nasty oil and gasoline to worry about, which is pretty much like your cell phone or your laptop. I mean, how less complicated would you like it to be? Now, some of you might be saying that the switch over to battery electric for a lawnmower isn't without some maintenance, which is true. However, most reviews use this fact of less maintenance as a selling point, relating it to less money spent on operating it. But what I hear instead is that they're trying to appeal to your procrastinating side or your lazy side, but is that such a bad thing? Now, there's nothing wrong with making something easier to use by simply saying, oh, you don't have to do that anymore with the new version. In fact, Briggs already tried that by putting stickers on their engines saying you don't have to change the oil anymore, only add it when you need to. And for those of you who didn't know it, not changing your oil is not a great idea. Not changing your oil once a year will keep your engine in much better shape than never changing it at all. But the idea that the new mower you just bought is even easier to use sounds a lot more appealing than buying a commercial mower requiring a lot of maintenance. Of course, saying that a string trimmer or a leaf blower was easier to own because you don't have to do any sort of maintenance to it would hopefully mean higher sales numbers than those that require a lot of care. And because of those higher sales numbers, other companies are willing to adopt the same strategy. But what's so bad about neglecting some basic maintenance? Well, in the case of this particular lawnmower, the carb was damaged by the gasoline that was left in the system. And because of that neglect in maintenance, the carb either needs a lot of work to fix it, or you can take the easy way out and just buy a new carb instead. However, if the engine had had a plastic carb on it instead of a metal one, this wouldn't have happened. Now, the plastic carb was a novel idea. It makes the engine less susceptible to aging gasoline, saved a bit of weight, and it also saved the company a couple of bucks making each one. Of course, this innovation and cost savings didn't necessarily get passed down to the consumer, but hey, who really cares about them anyway, right? I don't know if I have to say this out loud, who the changes or innovations in equipment is really benefiting, but we're going to continue on and see if it becomes more obvious as we go along. I will say that some of the changes in the equipment we're using are quite beneficial depending upon who you are, of course. Now, I'm not only going to be talking about lawn equipment, and that's because the changes are happening everywhere else too. Now, the next innovation I want to address happens to be inside our homes, and even though it's not widespread, it's still something for the procrastinators and lazy people alike. What I'm talking about are robot vacuums, sweepers, and even those that can mop your floors clean so you don't have to. Now, what used to be a chore that you gave your kids to do 30 years ago to teach them some responsibility has now been given to Rosie the robot. Of course, if you have mobility issues, I can understand the reason why you've delegated this task to something else. But if you're able but unwilling to do it, I guess that is your choice to do so. However, I still find this task better left to an actual person though. So is this a bad thing? No, not at all. If you recall, I don't think all innovations are bad, only that we might not see eye to eye on all of them. Of course, we can't talk about robot floor cleaners without mentioning the ones for your yard as well. And if you thought battery electric mowers were expensive, well, hold on to your wallet because you're going to be surprised by the prices of these. The funny part is that they're only a little bit bigger than the floor cleaners, however, they seem to be many more times expensive. But despite the price, I do think they're a great idea, especially if you have a medical condition limiting your ability to mow the grass yourself. Having said that, I wouldn't mind getting one of these because I don't know about you, but I really don't want to have a cardiac event out in public on the front lawn. There's just one problem with that idea though, and hopefully you agree with me. Since these robotic mowers are still quite new, even if you buy a name brand unit, the innovations are coming so often that even after 2 years, the model you just got might be old tech and not supported anymore. So getting the parts and service might be a huge headache. That means I might have to wait till the technology gets to a point where there's going to be a stable model and design platform. Unfortunately, what I just mentioned will never ever happen, and if you've been watching this channel for some time, I think you might know the answer before I even say it. The reason why waiting for a long-term design to enter the market might be a bad idea is because these companies don't want you to fix them to make them last for another 10 years. Instead, they want them to last a couple of years and then fail in some random way, forcing you to get another one. Now, you might be shaking your head in disagreement, and that's perfectly fine. However, companies that make these products make more profits selling new units versus selling individual parts for repair. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but I certainly know that's the business model I'd be following, otherwise the future of the company you'd be working for would be in question. Now here comes another question. Will the aftermarket come to the rescue and start to make cheap replacement parts for them? Now this is going to be a really tough question to answer, but I think I know what it'll be. Yes, the aftermarket will make some parts for replacement, however, you don't get something for nothing. So don't expect that off-brand battery pack you just bought to be anywhere near the capacity that it states. And if you got a battery for half the price, just expect it to last far less than half the time of the original one. Of course, with the purchase of an off-brand battery, you were at least able to get that machine working again, however, you're not going to get the work out of it like you used to. But I guess for a lot less money, you were able to keep that machine from also going to the landfill, which was extremely nice of you to do. So far, I've been talking about smaller items that are supposed to make your life a whole lot easier, either by small changes like plastic carbs or by making jobs like mowing your yard done by an expensive robot instead. This time, we're going to be switching gears, and even though it may seem a little bit out of left field, it's still a valid point. This time, we're going to be talking about the ever-growing area of electric vehicles. Now, this is important because this will hopefully have an impact on other types of equipment currently running on gasoline like riding mowers and lawn tractors. Yes, I am very aware of the overpriced zero-turns that are currently battery-powered, but they're so expensive that they're out of the reach of most consumers. But in this case, hopefully further innovations in batteries will make them a lot easier to afford. Just don't expect it to be anytime soon. So if you've been watching the news, whether it's unfiltered from other short-form videos or even on the evening news, you'll have seen the news about a certain EV brand having issues in these frigid temperatures. Now, I'm not here to talk directly about that brand. Instead, I want to bring awareness to it because it shows a problem that you or I could have when switching over to anything using batteries. Simply put, battery chemistry doesn't work very well when it's too hot or in this case, too cold. What that means is if you have a battery-powered snowblower, just expect it to be difficult to use when you need it the most. The same can be said when it's 100 degrees outside and you're using a battery leaf blower. That battery will get hot, and if it gets hot enough, that battery will just shut off to save itself. All these advancements and innovations in technology are supposed to help us out, but it seems like we're just trading one set of problems for a different set. The overall sales pitches I've seen as far as EVs goes is being greener, cleaner, and in the long term, less expensive to operate. Unfortunately, I do have to question a couple of those points, but the one I agree with the most is being cheaper to operate in the long term. The reason why is because it's being honest about being more expensive to buy than their competitors. They're just not wanting to say it directly. It's sort of like reading real estate ads where they're trying to downplay the shortcomings of a piece of property they're trying to sell. This quaint little cottage has a lot of potential with an opportunity for expansion for a growing family. What it really means is the house is too small and missing the central heat and air and only has one bedroom and one bath. I'm not here to discourage you if you're contemplating the idea of switching over to battery. I just think it's something we all need to be aware of. Unfortunately, what I see happening is that the innovations that are supposed to help us out aren't really doing that at all. Instead, they're helping those that make the products by offering a new and shiny product, hoping that we might buy them. Of course, I'm going to get all the help that I can get because believe me, I'm just as lazy as the next person, so any tools that could make my life better is certainly welcomed. And even though it would seem I'm putting a lot of effort into taking care of my stuff, in reality, the time I'm putting into it has to come from somewhere else. So unless they can find a better way for us to better use our time, all we can do is the best we can. Unfortunately, that's a whole lot of wishful thinking. So is there any hope for us to avoid these low quality machines they keep making? Probably not, so you might as well get used to these cheap plastics and delicate electronics. Otherwise, you and I can move to an area without extreme heat or cold, but I'm just not sure how many of us can fit on that tiny island. So do I plan on buying a robotic lawnmower in the future? You bet I am, but only when they get really cheap. What about getting an EV? Yes sir, but only once they make gasoline obsolete or too expensive to buy. I mean, what else am I going to do, right? The answer is there's not much you can do, so you might as well just go along with it. So my question is, are you planning on getting anything new and innovative this next mowing season? And if so, what is it going to be? Thank you for watching. I really do appreciate your time here. Please feel free to ask me any questions about this project or about your own projects, and I hope to see you in the next video.